absolute lollipop.
He's been able to advance.
It's in the air. This is going to be out straight down his throat. Oh, he's dropped.
Iguodala to Curry. Back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James.
Oh, he's knocked him over. What a ripper. What a good piece of bowling.
Ronaldo!
Stop Rose! Stop Rose! Unbelievable!
Welcome everybody. This is the Student Athlete Podcast. I am Santosh, a cricketer pursuing a degree in Bachelor's of Commerce.
And I'm Sriram, a bowler pursuing an ICT degree.
And we are your hosts.
Welcome everybody. On today's episode, we have a research engineer, a former basketball captain of the college Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of Communication and Technology, a husband, and a huge role model to many, Ankush Chandar.
Hi everyone, I am Ankush Chandar. I'm currently working as a research engineer in Rax Lab Inc. And I've been playing basketball since class 5th. So yeah, it's a part of my self playing basketball, and it has taught me a lot. So I look forward to share my insights today with you all.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
Santosh, shoot.
So, Ankush, can you take us back to your childhood? Like, how did your ball career start?
Okay, so earlier I started with football, and what used to be there was that it used to be too crowdy.
Hello.
And so I didn't quite like it. So I moved on to basketball. And yeah, so it all started when my father gifted me a basketball, and I started playing it at my home, dribbling and all. And then I started also going to school practices. So I was still very young. So school team used to consist of people class 8, 9, 10. So I started going there when I was in class 5th and watching them all play. It was quite inspiring also, although it was a little disappointing also because you didn't used to get a chance to play and all. But yeah, hanging around in the court with senior players, that's how I started basketball.
Cool. Yeah. So, what was in your mind when you actually started your career? Like, what was the goal? Did you want to go to the NBA or?
Okay, so actually, I was like born and brought up in a small town. So when I started basketball, I didn't even know there existed a thing like NBA.
Whoa.
Not. So all I knew about basketball was there were like two players, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson. That's all, and that's also I came to know in general knowledge book where they talk about who are the great players of a particular sport. So in hockey we used to have Dhyan Chand. In basketball we have Michael Jordan. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I didn't have a particular ambition around that. My goal at starting basketball was I wanted to be a part of something, and basketball gave me an opportunity to be a part of community of a team. So that was my intention when I started playing basketball.
So, are you still playing?
Yeah, whenever I get a chance, I play. So in Gandhinagar, after college, I stayed in Gandhinagar for around 2-3 years, and there also I continued playing basketball with the team, at Dhirubhai Ambani College.
Yeah.
So whenever I get chance, I get back on court.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great.
So, were you happy the way your basketball career ended or the way you wanted it to end? Because I wasn't there when it was like when you were graduating. I was there after you graduated.
Okay.
So,
I wouldn't say it has ended or it just goes on and off. So it's just a part of me. Like, so it's not that it's something start or end. It's just that you go with the flow. So it's a dance that you dance, right? So you don't think about it. It just happen. So basketball is just like that. Regarding my college career, I'm like pretty much satisfied with how it went.
Mm-hmm.
I met a lot of wonderful people in my life, which I wouldn't have met or known if I was not a basketball player. So that was a big plus. And also, I see it as a process of self exploration. So when you are part of something like that, part of a team, then you also get to know about yourself, which I think people miss out when they are not, part of a community, some sort of community. So be it sports, be it any organization or anything. So yeah, as far as self exploration is concerned, that was pretty satisfying. Also, the results we produced, yeah, I think we all surpassed our own individual, capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So as a team, we achieved some good results, which I don't think we would have achieved individually. So that was a big satisfaction too over there.
You used to show up to practice early in the morning, even after graduation. So, in that particular phase, what pushed you and what was your driving force?
Okay, so my driving force in general, in life is always contribution. So being a part of that community. So it didn't end when I left the college or after I graduated. So I used to go to practice even after I left the college because I still saw the scope of contribution over there. So I used to practice with younger players over there, and that's something I missed while I was practicing in college. So there's always a few players short and all right, and there's always in practice you see the your starting five practicing against the rest of the five. So it actually helps if you have a strong bench, which gives you strong practice to the starting five also. So I found that missing while I was practicing, and I thought that maybe I could give a tough
Give it back.
practice. Yeah. So by being part of the maybe I can be their sparring bot. So
Yeah.
on which they can practice, they can have tough games in the practice so that they can show up in games with all that energy. So yeah, and also I had a certain experience over time. So which is you start in first year count up when you see things in terms of years and not in terms of months. So I thought I can contribute to that community. So I just stayed along, and I think I'm grateful for that opportunity to be able to hang out there, and spend my mornings over there. I couldn't think of, at the start of the day other than, practicing
Wow.
basketball
Wow.
with
So,
younger players.
since you were there and when in my like before you left for Delhi, my first semester you were there, even my second. But you always had this calm. You were always calm and cheerful. So how did you keep your calm? I think only once you lost your calm, when you flipped off on Taril. But however the practice is going, if it's terrible, if it's good, or even the matches, how do you keep your calm?
So I think like it comes across, when you are leading the team, then whatever emotion, whatever feelings you wear, you infect others with that same kind of feelings. So I always ensure that I am uh, calm and patient, also high of energy. So if I show low energy, then I infect others also. So when you are leading, then it's kind of you are always under a watch, and people
True.
subconsciously mimic you whatever feelings you exhibit, right? So if you are like disappointed, your whole team also kind of unwillingly and subconsciously display that same emotion. So I always was proactive about how I uh, manage my conduct on the court. So no matter what is going on inside, it was conscious effort. So I'll give you an example. So I used to go to the practice, and so when I was captain, we didn't have a coach by then. So I used to plan practices, right? So I used to plan drills that okay we'll do this drill and that. So when I go to the court, let's say there were like one or two players less, right? And you couldn't you couldn't execute that drill
Right.
that well because of the missing two or three players. Now there are two conflicting emotions over there. One, you are disappointed, right? Like angry because of the
Yes.
like the practice is not going as perfect as it can.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, there are people who are actually showing up daily, right? So uh, you are angry also, but you are also pretty much hopeful about what is actually coming up over there. So I used to manage it. So I didn't used to show that disappointment or anger on court. But yeah, I used to have one-on-one with people and used to communicate that how much it matters that we all show up on practices. So that is just one incident. But yeah, it is a very conscious effort. Like leadership is a lonely business, and it's
Right.
also a conscious effort to manage your emotions.
So you read books, right? So which book has inspired you the most and why?
Okay, so there are a lot of books actually. So I'll take one book related to basketball and one like in general. So starting with basketball, there's this author, there's this coach called Dick DiVincenzo, and I've read his two books. One is called "Stuff Good Players Should Know." So that book had a huge impact in like communicating basketball common sense. So every game has a common sense, like few things that you are like ought to know,
Yeah.
and that book communicates it very well.
Hmm.
So I think that has helped me as a captain, as a player also.
Okay.
And there was another book by the same person, Running the Show. So that book is written for coaches and captains. How
Hmm.
so this all the managing of your self in front of the team, and how to be hard on players and how to be uh, like not that intimidating but yet inspiring,
Running
right?
the show.
So I think that books communicate that well. Running the Show. So these are the two. Then called Extreme Ownership. It is written by Jocko Willing. So big, like I think that was a turning point. So that book is really great. Uh, what I like about that book is that it gives
Hmm.
you control. So no matter what is happening around in your life, it book always inspires you to stay rooted in what you can do. So always think about what you could have done better instead of complaining others or looking at others what they could have done in that circumstance. So I think that's a great book. Like
Hmm.
what happens in this book is they share
Hmm.
their wartime experience. So they have been serving in Iraq, and how they are handling the situation over there. Then they give a business example of how same situation arises in business, and then they talk about the principle that worked in that situation. So there are a lot of good principles that they talk about, and that is a, like it really
Right.
helped me
So, since you were
grow as a
talking about
person,
extreme
as a
ownership
leader.
and how, you know, there are few things, few events which are in control of yours, and there are few events which aren't in your control, and of course, things are always falling apart, gluing together. But when everything is so chaotic, how do you stabilize? What what is the thing you go back to which keeps you ground rooted?
So like thinking about how to
Mm-hmm.
manage in chaos, I would point out another book which is Meditation by Marcus Aurelius. So another Stoic philosophy. So first thing it
Hmm.
communicates is that your life is anyway very short.
Exactly.
you know so you will be forgotten, and people who remember you will also be forgotten very soon. Like you are like very tiny speck of dust. So never take yourself seriously. Seriously. So yeah. So no matter what chaos is happening, I always see you know uh, something to be grateful about in a situation, because there are a lot of people who have done far
True.
better
True.
when they were dealt a far worse hand, right? So there's always something positive that you can figure out. And also, whenever the things are chaotic, it always
Hmm.
helps to detach yourself from that instance. Sometimes
Yes.
we just get stuck in the whirlpool of that chaos. So it always helps to detach yourself and
Yeah.
rise above and have a bird's eye view of how things are happening. So that's what's helpful
Now,
in
taking
chaos.
back to your ball career. So, Phil Knight in his Shoe Dog book, he quotes that don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do, and let them surprise you with the results. So, while you were the captain and while you were the leader, did you lead from the front and dominate, or you used to take the back seat and let the players do their thing?
Okay, so I think I've done both, and like it should be clear which one I regret doing. So, yeah, it happens. Sometimes like when you are like a little more experienced player, then you start thinking for them, for your players. So in court while playing, also you start instructing and telling people what to do and all. In short term, I think it works. It works, but when the real chaos hits, it just falls like castle of sand. So game is played by instincts, and our bodies, they are like very ancient memory, right? So our instincts, they always outweigh what
Hmm.
our mental construct, our intellect can do. So game is all about instinct, and if you let everyone play by their instincts, I think that's the best outcome can be achieved when we let everyone play by their own instincts instead
Oh,
of trying to uh, teach too much or something. So all that instructions,
hmm.
they are to
Right.
happen
Yeah. Get it.
in practice, right? And so from where I learned
Okay.
this thing, it was like there was this book called Inner Game of Tennis. So, the coach, he was telling that how he used to instruct people earlier, and then what he did, right? So earlier, what he used to do is when he was telling, let's say
Hmm.
he was instructing about, let's say, forehand shot to his students. So he used to every detail, he used to tell every detail like take your wrist like that, flex your wrist like this, and this should be your angle and all. And players just didn't work out on his student, right? And then what he did was he flipped his technology, like his way of teaching, and then he just showed them that okay, uh, look at how I am taking this shot, right? And what happened was people started improving dramatically, and the reason was that he wasn't telling people that to look this aspect of the shot. He was just saying that okay, here I am taking this shot, and just look at it and then try that shot yourself. So what was happening is that he was relying on the people's instincts. They were just watching it. Their body was,
Hmm.
uh, imbibing it, whatever they were seeing. Instead of, following his words, exact instructions, they were always
Right.
forgetting those instructions. One or two were always left behind. So that's where I felt, most of the things in life are done by instincts and not by,
Wow. Wow.
overthinking about them and all.
Talking of
So yeah,
instincts, I
instincts
think
matter a lot.
I get this in mind in the movie Coach Carter. I think it's one of the final games, and the coach lays up a plan for a particular for the fourth quarter, and this guy, I don't know what's his name. Yeah. So this guy takes the ball and rebound. He goes, he runs, and there was like nobody was there. He just does a free like he does a 3-pointer, and the coach starts yelling at him, "Why did you do a 3-pointer? Like when you had an option of dunking it."
Right. Yeah. So in Coach Carter also, he was like earlier he was very stubborn on them, and then he
Hmm.
started, accepting people for who they were, and that actually worked because a coach can't, you know, drive the minor decisions. A lot of decision making goes in a play. So only the players who are actually in the middle of that action, they are like they are in position to take the best call. So I think, yeah, instincts over instructions or intellect. That's what I. There is another movie. I think it's Glory Road, right? It's another great basketball movie. So in that also, like so coach says that you play my way. So first
Right.
half goes like that, and they're like all worn down, and then he gives them a little room, and then they both kind of gel up. They
Yes.
both play each other's game. So I think that kind of
Yeah.
understanding is very much important between
So,
coach and player.
who were your heroes when you were growing up, and who are your heroes today?
Okay, so like I don't have heroes exactly, but like I do take inspirations from a lot of
Ah,
people. So yeah, Michael Jordan has been a huge inspiration. Uh, Not like and the inspiration I get from him is that how true, how honest he was to his craft, right? So how like some people just pass through life, and some people define that craft. So he was one of those persons who like defined basketball, right? So NBA, he not only affected his own basketball career, but he also affected the financial
true.
outcome
Yes.
of basketball while during his career, right? uh, so yeah, that's what happened, and all he did was whatever he did on court, that's what led to that success. So he focused on what he was in his control, and it led to things far beyond his own circle, right? So he had been a good inspiration. Kobe Bryant has been a great inspiration. Like he left too soon, but yeah. So how and one thing I liked about Kobe Bryant is that he wasn't obsessive just about basketball, but
Yes.
Right.
his whole outcome,
Yes.
outlook about life. I really admire that. Whatever
Beginning.
he
Yes.
picked up, later on he got into storytelling. He carried same outlook, over there also. So one thing I learned from is that what you are as a sports person, you carry it on and off the court also. So it can't be that you are, a killer
Yes.
in
Yes.
court
Yes.
and
Yes.
then you can't, be loud on some other part, right?
Just
So
reflect on your
mindset you
behavior outside
carry
the court.
on 24/7 with you. Yeah, so it's like if you have a winning habit, killer instinct on court, then you will also reflect that in your,
Perfect.
studies or other initiatives that
That's
you
that.
take and great
Things that will
inspiration.
stay forever with me about Kobe is that when he retired from basketball, he said that the next 20 years of my life will make the previous 20 like nothing. And
Yes.
that showed how lively he was, how rich he was in
Right.
life. That's inspiring.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's killer instinct, that hunger, and if you want to know both, about the hunger of these two players,
Relentless.
Relentless.
Push
I
Yes.
forward.
recommend
Tim
you
Grover.
Constantly.
you get a peek into their mindset, their hunger, and how they took their craft. So I think that was a great book, also, like both for sports people and for any walk of life. I think hard dose of inspiration. That very blunt book. So coolers are which just barely do their job, right? So they just able to do whatever they are told, right? And closers are like somehow, at some occasions they will rise up and live up to that expectation and they'll do stuff. And then there are cleaners who are like who define the job they are doing, right? They are at the actual cleaners. So yeah, every chapter, it defines that cooler will think like this, cleaner will, closer will think like that, and cleaner will think like that. So it helps you to set a standard on your own activities. That how would a cleaner think in this set
I
of
think the best
process.
part
So I think
about
yeah,
that
that
book
was
is,
a
apart
great book.
from
Like,
him telling about the cleaner, closers, and coolers, he gives anecdotes about how each person behaves. Like, for example, Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan. You know, even Dwayne Wade, to that matter.
right. sometimes you know what a good person looks like, but you don't know you don't know like the difference, that subtle difference between the closer and the cleaner, how a cleaner would behave. This is very thin line between that, right? Because if you look from the top, they both are like will seem equal to you. Like, so he gives
Right.
an example, right? That LeBron James is a closer actually. Kobe Bryant is the cleaner. So he says that to stay in one team throughout your career, no matter what, going through all those injuries and still
Yeah.
ensuring that your team wins 5 titles, right? So that a cleaner, that's what defines the cleaner. So yeah, that
One
was
more
like
thing I like about Kobe is
really
he
good, like
mentions that when
good.
Dwight Howard was coming to Lakers in 2010, if I'm not wrong. So he the whole media was up like now it's going to be a team game for Lakers and all. Then Kobe Bryant comes up and he says, "No, this is my team and I'm going to lead it." That will be like, that will be like, oh wow.
Yeah, so what I took from that was that sometimes you need to be
Yes.
sometimes you have to look like an asshole, right? You you like, if you are to be great, then you on your way you
Exactly.
will end up offending people. And if you are okay with that, you will be great. And if you are like just people pleaser, then outcome won't be that great. So there is like another person in business who has tell, like, if you are if you're an asshole for short term, people actually end up respecting you in long term. But if you're a people pleaser in short term, then
Wow.
they
Wow.
might end up
Yeah.
passing you off as a easygoing guy in the long term. So I think in practices also, if you push people hard, they might
Yes,
dislike you for a short term, but in a longer run,
that's
they will
true.
be grateful
Right.
for
So,
you.
tell us about Rackster.io. Like, it's your startup, right? So, what made you go from like a
Right. Yeah.
stable job or a path to a stable job, leaving that path and going to a entrepreneurship and going for something which is uncertain?
Yeah. Like completely change the from shift sports to a startup. What was the reason behind this and how did the process go?
Okay. So first of all, I'll talk about
Mm-hmm.
Rax Labs. So Rax Lab is a Gandhinagar based startup, and we are currently building this product called Rackster. So it's a research productivity platform. We are building for academic researchers. So master students, postdocs, doctoral students, professors, uh, how they can get more out of their time. So can we improve the productivity of them? So how it all started was when I was ending my masters. So I was there were two conflicting thoughts in my mind, whether I want to continue my studies. So I want to go for PhD or I want to go back to the industry, right? So I've already been in the industry for around 3 years, and I wasn't willing to go back into same kind of setup. So the reason behind that was I found it a little slow. So the learning, my learning wasn't in my control. So it was like in big organization, this is what happens. Uh, like they pay you good amount of money, but your learning is not in your control. It's always in their control. So the technologies, so
You
whatever you
need
learn,
to adapt
it
to
is
what they
actually
say.
not in your control. So the other thing was the other option. Yeah, they say, plus also that the atmosphere is not that what shall I say, not that harsh. So there is a harshness which comes, let's say if you are in, let's say, secret services, right? So
Hmm.
the atmosphere, the kind of work you do, the feedback that you get on day-to-day basis,
Right.
it is very fast, and it is also very harsh, right? So man is a product of his atmosphere. So no matter what intent he starts with, no matter what he has in mind, ambition he has in mind, but his atmosphere will always
Correct.
overcome his
Correct.
individual ambition. So that's what I have felt, right? So that ruled out, going back to the industry. Now I was thinking about continuing my studies in PhD, but what I had learned from my own experience is that even though the industrial atmosphere was slow, but I ended up learning more in the
Wow.
industry than in an academic setup. Going through courses and all. So then I took a midway, like, okay, let's. I've already seen a particular kind of industry. Let's try this another extreme, right? So there's this professor, Saurabh Das Gupta. He's the founder of our company. So I was talking to him, and I found him very ambitious about this idea, right? And it kind of attracted me because I always look for some uniqueness in people, right? Like so he kind of had that thing in him, and I said, okay, let's try this thing. And I joined it, and it has been like 3.5 years. We are still
Wow.
going on, right? And thankfully we are doing great. So yeah, that's how I ended up in a startup. And I would like to point out, this thing you face in startup, and the same thing I faced in my basketball career also. That is like importance of sales. So when I was in team, I had to sell it to people. So when a student comes into college, right, they are like conflicting things that attract him, right? I can join this bureau, I can join debate club, I can join a lot of things, right? And there is this thing, obscure thing, joining a basketball team, when you have like little experience in basketball before. So it's a sales job actually, to inspire people to rally people behind that mission and keep them on track for like consistently for a long stretch of time. So I think same goes with startup also. Like these big companies, they are like paying a lot to people, right? So it's kind of you can't just address it via money. You have to address a lot of aspects of people's personality, and I think it teaches you a lot. So that's the thing that helped me in startup, which
So
I
you must be aware of the
faced in
Golden Circle,
my
right?
sports career also.
By Simon Sinek. How you should do things.
Uh,
Why,
Golden
why, how, what.
Circle. I think
Start with
Simon
why.
Sinek start with why.
That's a good way to
Right,
say
right,
things
right,
to people.
right. Start with why. Yeah,
So you have your own
right.
startup, and you have other responsibilities. So what differs from people or results? One of the factors is time management, right? So what advice would you give on time management? For example, right now I'm interning, so I have to go morning. I decided to show up at 8 in the morning, be the first one to come, and be the last one to leave. So it's around 7 in the evening. So I have these other hobbies that I have, like reading, for example, writing, but I don't get time for that now because since I've decided to invest a huge amount of time in doing something else. So how do I manage time over there?
So, like time management is about, I must say, ruthlessness. Okay? Because there are a
Right.
lot of
Correct.
good
Correct.
things competing for your time. So there are a lot of good opportunities that you face, right? So, there's this saying, "What is the enemy of great?" So, like, good is the enemy of great. If you are preoccupied with a lot of good things, right, and you are like by default moving along those good things, then you won't reach great things. So that ruthlessness is always there. So I'll take an anecdote. Once Warren Buffett asked a person to list down all those things uh, which are his goals,
Okay.
right? So he asked him to list down 10 such things. So he lists down all those 10 things, right? And then he asked him to pronounce the first three things. So he just listed that, okay, these are my first three goals, right? So then he asked, what should I do about what are those 7 things about? So the person said that these are the things I'll do in my spare time. Okay. So what Warren Buffett asked him to do is that cancel out all those 7 things, because those 7 things are the
Wow.
biggest enemy of the first 3 things. Nothing has more potential in distracting you from those 3 things than the 7 next things in line. So I think it's all about proactively, ruling out those things which are not that high
This
leverage
this sounds familiar to
in
the
long term.
80 by 20 principle, right?
That's what
Pareto's
right,
principle.
right, right. Yeah,
Pareto's
like
principle.
I think it's called Pareto principle. So 20% of the stuff, gets 80% of the results, and it's true. Like of all the people, I think 20%
True.
of the people
Exactly,
are having
exactly.
80% of the impact in your life. So it's
Hmm.
very much important how we choose that
So
20%.
that's with time management. So your hobbies, since you were mentioning hobbies over there, since I also mentioned about doing hobbies, so you said like you love.
So about programming, like I must say that
Mhm.
it's kind of thing that teach you how to delegate things, right? So uh, like how to automate stuff, right? So like we talk about time management, right? We want to save as much time as possible. So I see
Hmm.
programming as something like that. So you build something that works while you are sleeping,
Hmm.
kind of stuff, right? So when you automate something through programming, so programming is one of those mediums which actually helps you uh, save time by delegating that stuff to computer. So if you someone wants to start programming, I think they should look for things which are like very time consuming for them, and
Hmm.
then they should find alternatives. Can I automate it via uh, computer, right? So that's how I started
Oh.
learning how to program. So my first programming language was basically shell scripting. So I used to write scripts and automate all the boring work, through that. So that's how it all started, and I think it gave a sense of power user, that you are kind of
Hmm.
Yeah.
uh, in control, you are in command of stuff, right? So that's a good place to start, because when you are solving your own problems, you are actually quite motivated. Then you are, some when you're solving some random problems in order to learn something. So that's what I recommend when people start in programming, to start with your own problems. And regarding first programming language, I think I would
Hmm.
recommend Python. I have a bias towards Python, although it's not my first programming language, but yes, it is very beginner friendly, and it is also it has great
Right.
community around it. So yeah, Python would be a
So,
great programming language to start with.
what advice would you give a young athlete who is coming up the ranks and at the same time has his family responsibilities in place? Like, what should he do in such a situation, and how can he manage both?
uh, okay, so by family responsibility, you mean time, right? Time constraints that it put. So I think they are both interconnected. So you can't have a great day at
Yeah.
sports, right? Like if you are having a bad time at home, right? So it's interrelated. How you perform in your workplace, or let's say if you're on court, in sports, it actually ends up affecting your family life. And if your family life is not going great, then ultimately it's going to have a toll in your sports also, right? So the advice I would give is to see this as one, right?
Right.
And seek principles which apply both in your life also, in your personal life also, and in your sports
Yes.
life also. So like how I see it is, the principle I follow is contribution, right? So uh, like there was this conflict happening inside me uh, between competence and contribution, right? So my mindset was I should be the best,
Correct.
possible
Right.
person, right, in a given task, right? So I was striving for competence, but when you strive for competence, you fall into competition, you start looking at other players. Some are better than you, some are like not better than you. So there's huge ego
Okay.
involved in when you are addressing it from the perspective of competence. Okay, but when you start from contribution, this whole thing becomes like not in terms of competition, but in terms of cooperation. So in competence, you are looking for who is better than me, who
Right.
is not better than me. You are forming some vertical relationships, right? But when you think in terms of contribution,
Right.
uh, you are actually forming lateral relationships. You're actually looking at how can I cooperate with these persons to make their life better, and while also gaining happiness out of that. So the reason I brought up contribution here is it is that principle which works both in family life as well as in professional life also. So when your goal is to contribute to people, to community, then you end up being happy, and you end up having good relationship, whether it is work or it is in family. And you know
Right.
ultimately, by following your contribution, you actually end up being competent also, because when you are driven by contribution, you right. So in Last Dance also, the series started with
Yes.
Exactly. I
Michael
want the
Jordan
Chicago
saying
Bulls to be
that
remembered
I
like
want my
Lakers
organization
and
to
the
be
Celtics.
respected. That's what right. Right. So that was his goal. His goal was not to be the best scorer or anything, right? And look what he achieved, by thinking from the point of contribution. So
Correct.
he just wanted his organization to be respected. That was his goal, and he wanted to contribute as much as possible.
Yeah.
And to what length it took him, like that's just history, right? So it's always helpful when we think in the contribution instead of just being good at
Correct.
something, because you run out of motivation when you just think in terms of being good at something, right? Because one day you will find somebody who will be a lot better than you, right? And that will be a disappointing moment if you just see life
Right.
as some levels to be some staircase. So that's what helpful in managing my personal life as well as
Right.
the professional life.
Talk us through your hostel life, like the struggles, the memories, and much more.
Okay, so in my bachelor's,
Hmm.
I was more of a shy person. So first time I left my home, so I had trouble socializing with people. I was alien to that process. So hostel life kind of threw me into that kind of world, and it was. I think it was a character shaping experience. So some you need some incident
Correct.
in your life that actually turn you into something better, right? So I see hostel life as that. So hostel life is just a miniature world, right? Like in world you meet different sort of people, right? So they may be conforming to your beliefs, they may not be, they may
Hmm.
have some different upbringing and all. So the hostel life was just like that. So I was getting used to a world which is of which I'm not the center, right? So at home you
Hmm.
are the like center of the universe, right?
Yeah.
But when you go to hostel, you meet all different sort of people with different kind of belief, different lifestyle, and then you start accommodating them. So in that way, I think I find my hostel life like I'm grateful for that that kind of experience. uh, then in my masters, I think it
Right.
was like more of a hanging out together, that kind of stuff. So yeah, so I think everyone should go through a hostel life once in life. Like that's what I believe prepares you for the
Right.
world outside, to deal with different
So
people
I
that
think
you
this is
meet
the
in your
last
work
question.
life also.
Uh, on marriage, Ankush. Like, we all are bachelors over here. You're the only one I think I know. I interact so often. Uh, who is married? So marriage. When we like nowadays, people have commitment issues. There are many things. So, what is that love that goes in, the sacrifice. There's a vision for marriage too. So what is that?
Okay, so like frankly speaking, I'm still trying to understand that aspect of myself. But yeah, I'll point out something, right? So there are like a few things. There's trust, and there is competence, right? So trust is something that is conditional, right? So when you work with somebody, right? So trust is in action over there, right? So it is conditional because let's say that you work with somebody, right? uh, then you have this thing that, okay, given these conditions, this person will act in this way, right? So I can trust this person. So trust is conditional, right? But confidence is unconditional. So when you have confidence in a person, then you are not actually placing your belief in the conditions, but on that person. So in that way, it is unconditional. So that is what I think love is. Love is when you have confidence in a person, and it is a very courageous action. People have commitment issues because they lack courage to actually have unconditional confidence in something else. So I think life is incomplete without going through that experience. When you are actually able to have that, find that kind of courage in yourself to believe in somebody unconditionally as a human being, and accept them in your life.
So,
So I think, yeah, it's an act of courage. That's what it
so
takes.
uh,
So marriage,
should
love, all
should
these
a
are
person go
matter
in
of
search of
courage.
love, or at the right time it naturally comes?
Or like, they say that, right? Work hard enough and, everything will fall at your feet. Whether
Huh.
if girls, money, or whatever it is. So what is it all about? Everyone has their own philosophy over there.
Okay, so what I feel is that when people look, okay, I'll have destiny. Destiny will make me meet somebody, something like that sort. So
Wow.
I have a belief that people believe in that because they lack courage to actually start a relationship with a person, right? So let's say that you have a person, in your life. It's like good person, and you can start a relationship with that person. So people kind of trick themselves into believing that, okay, destiny will make me meet something, because they lack courage. First, they lack courage. Second, they lack initiative to get into a relationship, because it puts you into a very vulnerable situation. So I think that's not that's not an act
Wow.
of waiting. It's an act of doing. So love is not a noun, it's a verb. You do it, you consciously put effort in your day-to-day life, and then it grows into something beautiful. So it's not something that happens on its own. What happens on its own is basically it's not actually love, but more of an attraction. So let's say you are passing through a shop, and you find something, an attractive toy, and you just want to own it, right? So
Yes.
you don't love it. You don't say, I love this toy, right? But I have this urge to own it. So, so what happens on its own, that impulsive thing, it's not love. It's just an urge to own something. And
Wow.
love is
Wow.
far
Beautifully
more,
said.
Well said. Really well said.
beautiful, long
I really
lasting
like the part
than
when you said
that
love is a
thing.
verb, not a noun.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
And finally, now when you look back, how do you define your journey? Where do you see yourself?
and what is your vision ahead?
Right.
Okay, so I think I find it a very fulfilling experience, because being born in India, and if
Yes, yes.
you're able to have a hobby, sports as a hobby, I think you are very privileged, right? Privilege in the sense that your family was well off to actually send you to a school or college which had a basketball court. Now, if you like look at all the schools, all the colleges in India, how many of them have a basketball court, right? So that is one thing. Having a basketball court in your school, that itself is a privilege. And then you being able to afford it, right? All that comes along with having a sports career. So yeah, I'm pretty grateful about it. I feel privileged about it. No complaints at all. And another thing that I think is the people I met through it. Right? I think uh, I found a lot of good relationships. You know, formed good relationships by virtue of me being active in sports, and that is helping in my personal life also. Like I see business also as a team sport. Excuse me. So yeah, and my future vision, I think I see sports not just as a source of entertainment. I think entertainment is how sports get revenue, but I think sports primary focus
Yes.
is to inject you know mature leaders into the society, right? So I see sport as that medium. Entertainment is fine; it comes afterwards. But first thing is that being in a sports situation, you are able to
Right.
condition people, which you can't normally do in any other setup. So yeah, so my long term, my
Wow.
retirement plan is to have something like that, sports academy perhaps
Right.
for young students where they can learn real life values also by medium of sports, right? So yeah,
Just
that's
wonderful.
that's how I see sports.
The most humble and wise. That's Ankush Chander for you. Thank you so much for listening, guys. You have been a wonderful audience. Catch you soon with another episode of the Student Athlete Podcast.